might not be a surprise that a strategy consultant would tell you that an AI tool or an AI use case needs to align to the strategy of the broader firm. But actually it's really important, especially as there's lots of tools in the market that can do good demonstrations and get you quite excited, but actually it needs to support the wider strategy of the business. So for example, if your business's strategy is to grow AUM without a proportionate increase in headcount, looking at tools that are focused on efficiency, such as extracting data from unstructured documents, is probably more of a relevant AI use case there. Similarly, if your firm has a white glove approach to client services, you may be interested in looking at tools around content creation to create more engaging content, or similarly with LP web scraping as an example, you can scrape data on your investors, keep up to date with their trends and then reach out to them at the right point. So that's another example of how an AI use case can align to the strategy of the firm. AI use cases are a super hot topic at industry conferences and also discussions between peers in terms of what they're doing with AI. But actually what's equally important, as well as the scenario of where AI can be used, is the outcome. So thinking about outcomes as well as use case. So outcomes could be efficiency gains, and it could be cost savings or headcount reduction, but it could also be softer things as well. Such as strategic benefit to the firm. But I think thinking about outcomes instead of use cases can sometimes be a more sensible way of prioritizing those use cases and ultimately give you a bit of a framework to work out which AI tools you should pursue. Buy versus build has been widely debated for years and years in the private equity industry, and I think a consensus definitely over the last 5 to 10 years, especially with the development of the SaaS environment, has been to buy tooling. And I think whilst that's still relevant for AI, if you can buy a discrete tool, then great. But ultimately, if you can't buy a tool because you've got an edge use case where a current tool doesn't necessarily address that use case, then I wouldn't take building a tool off the table, especially now there's lots of good development partners out there that can develop tools quite cheaply and quickly. And ultimately, if you're building something that's not in the market, it almost gives you that competitive advantage because you've got an AI tool that can do something for you that others don't have access to. So I think buy AI tooling where it's available, but don't rule out building it, because if you've got a really good use case, I think there's lots of options out there that justifies building. So sponsorship in the context of AI is effectively having the buy-in from C-suite to invest in AI technology and projects. And I would say generally in the market, actually senior execs are very excited about the potential of AI and do provide that sponsorship. It's really important because without that sponsorship, you wouldn't get the resources or the money to be able to make the projects a success. So if you're struggling with sponsorship, you can have conversations around what would our LPs be expecting of us in terms of investment in technology. I think this is particularly important for asset managers that invest in technology businesses. So if that's one of your investment strategies and then you're not investing in the latest technology for your own operations, LPs, when it comes to their operational due diligence, may have questions. I think the other sort of conversation to be had at the sort of C-suite level is that if we're not investing in AI and the latest set of technology, are we falling behind peers, which will then carry long-term technology debt. ROI is a really good sort of tool for assessing how attractive an AI use case or an AI product is used, and particularly in private markets, people love that sort of mathematical grounding of, yes, we should do this because it's going to have a great ROI. But at the same time, what I would say is don't overcomplicate it and don't be necessarily too scientific, because in some cases it can be quite complicated to come to an ROI. And where you don't want to be is the fact that you're not pushing on with an AI project or not using a certain AI tool just because you can't calculate the ROI or you can't justify it yet. There's lots of qualitative, strategic benefits that are really obvious. So it's just a case of weighing up both your ROI, but also your broader set of assessment criteria as to whether an AI tool or an AI use case is the right thing for you as a firm to do. So when thinking about risk and AI, it's not totally different to other technology products. So a lot of the risks are quite consistent, whether that's data security, data privacy, ethics, but there are some differences that should be thought about. So Gen AI, for example, is novel in the information that it produces each time, and it can also hallucinate. And that's something that is actually quite specific to that technology, and therefore those risks need to be considered. And you also need to put appropriate actions in place to mitigate them, so ensuring there's human oversight of the outputs and they're disclosed appropriately where they should be. So there are other considerations that apply to AI, but also just general technology projects that are good to be thinking about. So where's your data being stored and where's it being processed? Ultimately, if something goes wrong, can you justify to your LPs what diligence you did over the provider and why you were comfortable with giving them access to your data? And then other things like regulations, so GDPR, DORA for AI, the EU AI Act. They're all things that you should be thinking about, but I would say ultimately get legal and compliance involved, whether it's internal or external, to make sure that you've closed out those regulatory risks. Governance is a really big topic in itself, especially when it comes to AI and thinking about how you mitigate all the risks and ethical considerations. But some, I guess, practical things to think about is ensuring that you've got an individual or a team within the organisation that's responsible for maintaining the firm's AI strategy. And that's really important because AI technology and the application of it continues to evolve rapidly. So making sure that you're comfortable as a firm with your AI policies and what's permitted and what's not permitted is really important, and to have that sort of oversight is key. Another thing to think about is at the team level, ensuring that individuals are accountable for verifying the outputs from the model, and also ensuring that they disclose it. And then finally, another practical thing that you can do is start to monitor usage. So individuals within the firm look at what tools they're using, how often they're using them, and you can get some quite good analytics from that. And if somebody's using a tool a lot and somebody else isn't using a tool very much, get them to share knowledge. And there are a few practical things that you can do from a governance perspective. When people think about AI, I think they think a lot about technology, systems, data. They don't necessarily always give the consideration to people that they should, but actually people and AI are so closely linked. So the capability and the AI literacy of your teams determines what AI tools you'll be able to use and how fast you can move with AI. Similarly, the tools that you select are going to have an impact on the literacy of the team as they start to use the tools. So they're very linked, and thinking about people and AI and then the future of your business and how you recruit and what skill sets you're looking for are all equally as important as finding a good tool in itself. When assessing AI tools for use by the business, as part of the longer term consideration, and I guess also assessing the business case for that AI tool, you should start to think about if this is successful for the business, can we then provide it to our portfolio companies as a value creation lever? So for example, if you get some AI tooling that helps you with content creation and that helps with your digital marketing strategy, can you then push that to your portfolio companies and also train them how to use it, an AI value playbook? There's lots of levers that you can benefit from doing something as a manager that will then transcend down into your portfolio. So when thinking about technology change, you can actually think about it slightly different with AI. So I guess think of more of a traditional technology implementation, might be an implementation of a treasury management solution or an upgrade of an accounting system. Typically, these are quite large projects that need quite robust governance around them and go over quite a long time frame and lots of testing. Whereas AI, especially for edge use cases, so quite discrete use cases where it's not affecting current sort of systems and data, you can actually move much quicker and be much more entrepreneurial. So having that, building that internal capability that can support you to move quickly and do pilots can ultimately mean that you can adopt AI technology much quicker than traditional technology solutions and assess if it's feasible for your organization without spending lots of money.